Hi there, this is Tony from pianotone.ca, and this is my review on the Yamaha YC-61 stage keyboard. And FYI, this review also applies, for the most part, to the Yamaha YC-73 and YC-88. The only differences between these three models is that the YC-73 and YC-88 both include a sustain pedal and also have additional balanced XLR outports that the YC-61 does not have. And each of the three keyboards in the YC line have different key actions. I bought the Yamaha YC-61 a couple of months ago to test out with my blues band. I've tested quite a few different stage keyboards, looking for something that will work well for both Hammond organ and piano and electric piano, and the Yamaha YC-61 is definitely one of the best choices out there. I've got tons of great things to say about it, and a couple of just little tiny negatives, so let's check it out. So what is a stage keyboard? As the name implies, a stage keyboard is intended to be used on stage. So what makes a keyboard a stage keyboard? The first thing that comes to mind is probably high quality sounds. And while that's definitely part of it, there's a lot of Yamaha keyboards out there that have great sounds, but definitely aren't intended to be used on stage. So what really makes a keyboard a stage keyboard, in addition to sound quality, comes down to a few other important things. First off would be a user interface that allows users to make changes quickly and easily, and also that allows the user to easily see what their current settings are just by glancing at the front panel. So this basically means having a lot of direct access buttons, controls, and indicators that minimize the amount of menu deep diving into nested menus using a menu screen to see or change your settings. Next thing is proper connectivity for the intended use. The most common and important example of this is proper left and right line out ports, which provide the best connection to external audio equipment like amps, PA systems, and mixers. And for certain uses, you might also want a stage keyboard to have 5-pin MIDI in and out ports, for either using your keyboard to control another keyboard or for having another keyboard giving access to the sounds on your keyboard. And then the third thing is portability. If you're moving your keyboard around a lot, the more portable the better, but keep in mind everybody's line of what they're willing to carry around might be a little bit different. For example, if I'm playing 3 or 4 songs in a blues jam at a bar or something, I'm only going to want to bring one keyboard, and it needs to be a light one and easy to set up quickly. If I'm playing a full 3 sets with my band, then I might be willing to bring a 2-tier stand and 2 keyboards. So the Yamaha stage keyboard lines. Where does the YC series fit into Yamaha's massive keyboard selection? The YC line is one of 3 product lines in Yamaha's stage keyboard lineup. Okay, the CK product line. This includes the Yamaha CK-61 and CK-88, which are Yamaha's most recent and budget-friendly stage keyboards. The CK-61 has a light organ kind of synth action, and the CK-88 has a fully weighted and graded hammer action. I owned and reviewed both of those keyboards in the CK series. I'll leave a link in the description below to my review. And the YC product line. The YC line is a step up in price and features from the CK line. It includes the 61-key YC-61 I'm reviewing here, which has a semi-weighted waterfall action that's very much geared towards organ players. The YC-73 has kind of a middle-of-the-road action from Yamaha called balanced hammer. That falls between the fully weighted hammer actions and the organ action on the YC-61. The YC-88 has a high-end triple-sensor natural wood fully weighted and graded hammer action, very similar to a piano. A unique aspect of the YC line and the CK line is that they both include organ engines and dedicated organ functionality like drawbars, vibrato, chorus, percussion, and rotary speaker control. The organ engine on the YC line, however, is a step up from the organ engine on the CK line. Then there's the CP product line. The CP line is focused much more on piano and electric piano. The CP-73 has the same balanced hammer action from the YC-73, and the CP-88 has the same natural wood triple sensor hammer action from the YC-88. The main difference between the CP line and the other 2 lines is the focus. Much more focused on piano and electric piano player needs than on the needs of organ players. As such, the CP series doesn't have the organ drawbars or the other organ controls found on the CK and YC series. So my buying decision, why did I buy from the YC series? And more specifically, the YC-61. Well, 75 to 80% of what I play is Hammond organ, with the rest being piano and electric piano. So the YC line definitely made the most sense for my needs. Since the YC-61 has the closest key action to a Hammond organ, it was my first choice. Now, one thing to quickly mention before getting into this review, if you've just purchased a YC keyboard, then make sure you check for firmware updates. My YC-61 shipped in late 2024 with version 1.2, and I knew from watching tons of YouTube videos that newer versions were available. A new and significantly enhanced Leslie rotary effect and some new FM organs were added in version 1.2, and other new voices, including a new Hammond and some other new features, were added in versions 1.3 and 1.4. I'll be posting a video on how to back up your current firmware and live sets and how to update your firmware in the next few days. So stay tuned on the channel for that. Okay, let's get into the review. Okay, so key action. Key action on the Yamaha YC-61 is a 61-key semi-weighted waterfall action, which is the type of action you'll usually find on keyboards where playing organ is the focus. In case you're not familiar with what waterfall means, it means that there is no lip sticking out over the front edge of the key like there is on a traditional piano action. And the front corners are also slightly rounded on a waterfall action. This makes organ techniques like organ smears nice and smooth, really easy and super comfortable. Now, one thing I do have to note is that while the octave width on the YC-61 is considered to be full size, it's actually the typical width that you find on full-size synth actions, which is 159 millimeters. That's narrower than the 164, 165 millimeter octave width you find on fully weighted digital pianos, or on most of the other clone wheel organ-centric keyboards like the Electro or the Hammond SK and XK series keyboards. Now, this is something that you might or might not notice, and you might or might not care about. I've asked other reviewers and some super talented pro players what they think about the octave width difference, and I've been told by some that they didn't even notice, so it doesn't affect their play at all. I've also seen a number of people comment online that they struggle with going back and forth between the 159 millimeter and 164 millimeter widths. I've got to admit, I fall into that category. I find I can get myself used to the narrower octave width if I play nothing but that width for kind of a week or so. But then it takes a bit of an adjustment for me to get back used to the true full-size width again when I go back to play one of my digital pianos, and vice versa. Could just be the fact that I'm still a relative beginner, but it is something I do notice and I do struggle with, but you may not. But octave width aside, how does the action on the YC-61 feel? Pretty fabulous. I do find it to be a bit on the light side in comparison to the actions on the Hammond keyboards or my Studio Logic Numa Compact, and considerably lighter than the Electro, but it is super smooth, fast, and really comfortable to play. And while any action that isn't fully weighted and graded and is not ideal for playing piano pieces super expressively, you can definitely get by with this action for playing piano and electric piano, especially in a live situation, and especially if you're playing rock, pop, or blues. If you're wanting to play solo classical piano pieces, then this is definitely not the keyboard for you. Okay, so the user interface. As I mentioned in the intro, one of the most important features of a stage keyboard is the user interface. Can you see your current settings just by glancing at the panel? Can you quickly and easily change important settings without having to deep dive into a menu system? Well, just to sum up, the user interface on the YC-61 is absolutely spectacular, and quite possibly my favorite user interface ever. It's super intuitive and super easy to use. Okay, on the very left edge of the keyboard, we've got two levers that are customizable. You can assign things to these. This one kind of flicks back and forth, lands back in the center by itself. This one you can use kind of like a modulation wheel. Then you've got the overall volume of the entire instrument. Now on the YC, you've got 3 voices you can have going at a time, whether they're being layered, split across the keyboard, or even being triggered by an external MIDI controller keyboard. One of these 3 voices is coming from the organ category, and all the organ controls are on the left side of the front panel. You can choose what organ you want to use. There's different Hammond organs, there's different transistor organs, etc. Then you've got the drawbars, the percussion controls, vibrato and chorus. You've got the Leslie rotary speaker controls over here to stop or run it at slow or run it at fast. Then you can also octave shift your organ up or down quite easily with these handy buttons. There's the organ volume relative to the other voices that are being played on the keyboard. And then there's a pre-drive you can adjust as well. And then you can also determine whether you're working with the lower or the upper manual on the YC and assign different drawbar settings to each. Now, a super cool feature on the YC-61 are the light indicators behind the drawbars. When you choose a preset, it not only displays the drawbar settings here on the menu, showing these first 4 drawbars are all the way out, but it also displays those with the light indicators. So that's what my current setting is, regardless of where the actual drawbars happen to be. But as soon as I move these, then now I'm actually adjusting the setting. Now I can also set it up in the menu system. Moving this drawbar won't affect this setting until I reach that setting and go past it. Right now I've got it set to change the second that I touch the drawbar. Now something else that is also super cool and super useful is the fact that you can apply color codes to your drawbar lights and save them within your registrations. And you can specify a different color between the upper and lower within a registration as well. So for example, if I hit the lower, you can see that that set of drawbars is now in red, and it's only the first three drawbars pulled out. And then I go back to the upper and I get whatever settings I had left on the upper drawbar. So just to make sure you realize how cool this is, while the lower and upper button is mostly meant to allow you to split the keyboard into a lower and upper manual section, or to have an external MIDI keyboard control just the lower or upper, while the YC controls the other, you can also use this lower and upper button to just quickly toggle between two different organ settings within a song without having to manually switch drawbars and percussion and chorus settings, that type of thing. And with these drawbar light options, it's super obvious which one of those that you're on. Now the center section has the screen, buttons for calling up and working with registrations, or what Yamaha calls live sets. So I can scroll through my live sets using the wheel. Now there's also a section in here that I absolutely love, and every keyboard should have, that has dedicated buttons for a bunch of common tasks that are going to keep you from having to deep dive into a menu system. There are direct access buttons for setting the split point, for transposing the keyboard, and for setting the touch curve, which is super, super cool. There's also a button here for setting the tuning if you want to tune to non-standard tuning. And there's also a panel lock if you want to disable all of the buttons on the front panel. You can see that little lock logo came up. And now when I do things, nothing's going to actually change until I unlock the panel by pressing panel lock again. Then there are a couple of buttons for working with more detailed organ or Leslie speaker settings. What do the pedals and external MIDI keyboards do? And then there's a menu button for accessing more overall settings. Then to the right of the screen, we've got the keys section. This is where you can configure one or two more voices, A and B, to include in your registration. Each of these voices can be from the piano, the electric piano, the synth, or the others section. Now this is a good time to start talking about these metal switches that you see below different sections all along the front of the panel. These are awesome. They allow you to quickly enable or disable a voice and effect and immediately see what is and what isn't enabled. So for example, if you can see that voice A is enabled. If I flick on voice B, then now this actually switches to voice B up here, and you can see this dark light pad has now shown up in the menu screen. So I can turn it on and off super quick. Now, as far as configuring each voice, you can do that by switching back and forth between voice A and voice B. So voice A is the piano. I could switch this to a different piano, went to the S700. And then voice B, that's currently a dark pad. I could switch it to a different pad, etc. And that A or B also applies to the relative volume and tone and some other things down here. For example, right now I'm on B, so I'm on the pad. Let's say I turn that pad volume down, and I'm going to adjust the tone to be up there. And then I switch to voice A. Then now these settings are going to be back where they were set for voice A. So super, super cool. Then you can also, with these right now, you're hearing both voices all across the entire keyboard. That's because both L and R are enabled for both A and B. Let's say I wanted to split the keyboard. So instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have the piano, which is voice A. I'm going to make that just be on the right. So down low, you're not hearing the piano. And then for voice B, I'm going to have that just be on the left. So now you only get piano on the right, and you only get voice B on the left. And you can also, with these octave switching buttons, these are super handy to have, and every keyboard should have these right on the front panel. You can move up or down 1 or 2 octaves super quick and super easy. And then once again, you want to disable one of the voices. All you're going to need to do is flick the switch. Now you can also configure one of 2 effects for voice A and voice B. So right now I'm highlighted on voice A. I can turn on that effect and then choose between all these different effects choices and set the rate. And I can choose another effect and do the same thing. And then I can do that for voice B as well and have two different effects on voice B. Super, super cool and super versatile. And you can turn these effects on and off really quickly just by tapping those switches. Then the next section, which just says effect, if I enable that section with the switch at the bottom, has the same effects that were available over here. But on this one, you're applying it to the organ, key A, and key B. So you can also apply the effects to the organ in that section. Then we have a speaker amp section where you can choose a voice, so organ, key A, or key B, and then you can adjust the drive and the tone and choose a speaker type. So choose between a rotary or these are different amps, and then apply those to those voices and adjust them up there. And then you've got a reverb section where you can apply separate reverbs to organ, key A, and key B, or identical reverb to all three at once. And then once again, you can flick that on and off nice and quick and easy. Then we have a master equalizer section. This can be turned on and off, but it does apply to everything on the keyboard, and it's got a high, mid frequency, and low. So my overall thoughts on the user interface on the Yamaha YC series, absolutely amazing. I can't come up with a single thing missing or anything that could be changed or improved on this interface. I've never seen one this good on any other keyboard. It is so easy to just glance at the keyboard and see all your important settings, and so easy to quickly edit settings on the fly without needing to deep dive into menus to do so. The only settings that are available within the menu system are settings you're very unlikely to need in the moment while you're on stage. So fantastic job, Yamaha. So an example of something that you do have to deep dive into the menu for is deep dive voice customization. Now, I've mentioned in other reviews that I'm personally not much into spending a lot of time customizing my voices on any keyboard. I tend to use the built-in sounds and registrations with whatever effects are there by default, maybe add some reverb, and occasionally another effect or two. So while I'm not much into that, I know lots of people are and love doing it. And if that's your thing, you're not going to be disappointed with the YC series. With the organ voices, you can deep dive into adjusting leakage, key click, percussion, modulation, and panning. And for the rotary speaker, you can adjust the level, background noise, stereo mono, speed, and acceleration. For the non-organ voices, you can adjust mono, portamento, FM unison, EQ and filter, modulation, touch sensitivity, and panning. So if tinkering around with sounds is your thing, you're going to like all of these options. Okay, sounds on the Yamaha YC series. I can sum that up in one word if you don't want me to go into any more detail. Spectacular. The organ section is fantastic. There's 4 choices for different types of Hammond organs, then British, Italian, and simple sine wave transistor organs. And the new and improved rotary simulation is awesome. In my Hammond organ novice opinion, these Hammond sounds are much better than the Yamaha CK series. They're way better than the Studio Logic Numa Compact, but not quite as good as those on the Hammond clone wheels, but pretty close and still super impressive. Here is a demo of the organ section, mostly focusing on the Hammond sounds. Now, the piano and electric piano tones are, as you would expect, really good coming from Yamaha. The piano section includes variations of the CFX Grand, S700, C7, U1, CF3, and even a Hamburg Grand. So there are lots of great piano voices to choose from. The electric pianos are equally as good, and the extra voices like wind, brass, and strings are always amazing on Yamaha keyboards. Here is a demo of some of the non-organ voices on the Yamaha YC-61. So my thoughts on the voices on the YC-61. Pretty much amazing all around. In comparison to the Hammond SK Pro, I would say the YC organ voices are almost as good, but not quite, and that's saying a lot. The electric pianos on the SK Pro are really good and probably come close to those on the Yamaha, but the Yamaha pianos and other voices are all way better. All in all, a pretty amazing set of voices and with tons of effects and customization available. Registrations are live sets. I might do a deeper dive into working with live sets later on my channel, but just to give you a quick intro into how this works, it's actually pretty intuitive and really easy. A live set is a registration saved that has custom settings for 3 voices, one from the organ section and then voices A and B. There are 160 live set slots available, and they're grouped into 10 pages of 8 live sets each. The Yamaha website says the YC ships with 136 slots pre-configured for you and then 24 empty slots for your custom setups. I'm assuming that this is something that changed in an update when they added some new voices, but my YC shipped with 144 preset sounds, live sets, and 16 available slots. The built-in ones are a great way to test out different voices and effect setups and combinations. I'm not an effects expert, so I often start with a pre-built setup, and then I modify it to my liking and then save it in one of the available slots. So you can navigate through the live sets in a few different ways. See, right now it says 1-1, so I'm on page 1 and live set 1 within that. So these buttons down here correspond to the live sets within the current page. So if I press these buttons, you can see I go to 1, 2, 3, 4, up to 8, etc. And I can also navigate by going to the next page. So now I'm on page 2, voice 2, page 3, voice 2, that type of thing. Super easy to do, or I can also just turn the knob and scroll through the live sets this way if I want to. When you're using the knob, keep in mind that pressing down on it is like pressing an OK button or an Enter key. So let's say I want to create my own live set from scratch. I'm going to go to an available section which says init sound. So like I said, I've got 16 available sections in my YC. So I'm going to start with 19-1. Now I can make whatever changes I want to my sounds. I can configure these however I like. I'll turn on voice A and voice B. I'll switch voice B to be that, and I'll switch voice A to be an electric piano, and I can make any other settings changes that I want. And then when I'm done, I just press store, and right now it's prompting me for where do I want to store it. So I could just store it in the existing slot, which I'm going to do. So I'm just going to press down, press enter, and that stores it. Now I can also go in here and make additional settings by pressing the settings button so I can configure the external keyboard and all sorts of other stuff in here, drawbar colors. I'm going to rename this set to be something a little more meaningful. So then I can use these keys as the menu indicates. So I press 4 to delete the existing letters, and then I press 3 to insert the existing letters. So I'm just going to name it that, press enter, and then store it. And then it's going to prompt me, do I want to store this once again in that same slot? I could choose different slots if I wanted to, but I'm going to just store it in the same slot. And now I've got that live set available. Or if I wanted to start with an existing live set that has some settings I like, I can do that as well. Let's say I really like this gospel shout live set, except I want to change a couple of organ settings and I want to enable voice A or something. Then I can go make any other changes that I want, and then I can go store, and then I could overwrite the existing gospel shout, or I could move that into a available live set, which are these ones that say init sound. So I could put it in 19-2, and then now you can see I'm in 19-2, and I've got the first one that I made, and then the second one, which is basically a copy of the existing gospel shout with the changes that I made. So with only a handful of open slots, you might want to think through how you set those up. If I end up keeping my YC for a long time, I'm likely going to end up using up some of the built-in slots that I'm not interested in to make room for my own. But either way, working with the live sets is super intuitive and really easy to do. And you can back up your live sets within a complete backup that includes your current firmware version And you can and also should regularly back up just your live sets so that you can reinstall those after a firmware update. Firmware updates do erase all of your existing live sets, so keep that in mind. Okay, connectivity. For connectivity, once again, pretty awesome. One thing to note right off the bat is that like many higher-end stage keyboards, the YC-61 has a normal power plug instead of the cheaper and far less sturdy wall wart power adapter. That was one of the few complaints about the Yamaha CK series that I had, is that the power adapter and cable are kind of flimsy and I don't think would hold up super well long-term if you're moving it around a lot. Okay, so some connectivity that's common to all of 3 keyboards in the YC line. 1/4-inch stereo headphone port. Left and right 1/4-inch mono line out ports for connecting to external audio equipment. And if you just use the left port, you're going to get a merged left and right mono signal, so you can use this if your PA system or amp only has one available port. There's left and right 1/4-inch mono line in ports with a gain knob for sending audio into the YC, which then gets sent out of the line out ports along with whatever sounds the YC is making. This is super useful to have as opposed to the more typical 1/8-inch stereo audio input that is just meant to stream in audio from a device like a phone or a tablet or something. Because if you're using another keyboard, you can send that keyboard's audio through the YC with these ports to whatever amp or PA you're connected to, which is going to make the person working sound at your venue happy that you only need one connection to the house PA system instead of 2. And you can still stream in audio from a device just using a splitter cable from that device's headphone out that splits the signal into the 1/4-inch left and right mono ports on the mono ins on the YC series. That's what I do with my iPad for backing tracks. There's 2 1/4-inch expression pedal ports, which is super cool. I'm only using one at the moment for controlling organ volume swells, but having another available port is awesome. There's a 1/4-inch sustain pedal port, which does offer half pedaling if you have a compatible pedal. This works great with my Yamaha FC3A pedal. There's a 1/4-inch assignable foot switch port for connecting a brick-style foot switch or simple sustain pedal to. I have this mapped to my rotary speaker speed for my organ voices to switch between fast and slow. There's traditional 5-pin MIDI in and MIDI out ports, so you can use the YC as a controller to control other keyboards, or you can access the YC sounds from another controller. The most likely use for this, in my opinion, would be to use a fully weighted and graded hammer action controller connected to the MIDI in on the YC-61 for playing the awesome piano patches on the YC if you want a truer piano action. Or if you have the YC-88 with its fully weighted action, you could do the opposite. You might connect a lighter, more organ-friendly keyboard and to use the organ patches on the YC-88. Then there's a USB to host port for transmitting MIDI to apps on a PC or device, tablet or phone, whatever, which also transmits audio, which is super cool and super useful. This means you don't need an external audio interface to send high-quality audio from the YC to a device. And if you're using the YC to trigger sounds on a MIDI app on a device, then those sounds are going to come straight back through to the YC without any lag. Built-in audio interfaces are something Yamaha has been including in all sorts of their keyboards for some time now, and a lot of other manufacturers have been kind of ignoring this, but it's a great feature. And finally, there's a USB flash drive port, which is used for installing firmware updates, as well as saving or loading backups of your settings and live sets. Then, as I mentioned in the intro, there's some extra connectivity on the YC-73 and the YC-88 that the YC-61 doesn't have. They both have balanced XLR left and right line out ports. This is an awesome feature that I really wish they'd included in the YC-61 because it means you can connect to a PA system in a venue directly without needing an external DI box. A DI box converts your 1/4-inch unbalanced outputs to balanced signals to connect to XLR inputs on a house mixer. Balanced XLR cables can be run longer distances without picking up noise along the way from other electronic devices. I'll do a video one of these days on DI boxes. So this is an awesome set of connectivity. I really like all the available pedal ports and having left and right 1/4-inch line ins as opposed to just a 1/8-inch stereo audio in. That's awesome. And 5-pin MIDI in and out, especially on a keyboard like this that has 3 available sounds and easy external keyboard configuration, adds a ton of functionality. Some people might wonder, on a product this expensive, why no Bluetooth? Well, to be honest, for a stage keyboard, I would personally never trust a wireless Bluetooth connection on stage myself. I would always want a wired connection for that, so I don't feel that that's a loss. So what's missing or could be improved? What's missing on the YC-61? Not much. The sounds are amazing. The user interface is the best I've ever seen. It's light and portable. The connectivity has almost everything you could possibly want in a stage keyboard. The build quality is really solid, and the key action has a lot going for it, especially if you are playing a lot of Hammond organ. So what about this action? As I mentioned earlier, this is a really nice and high quality feeling waterfall action that is fabulous for organ. And you can get by with it for piano and electric piano, especially if you're playing rock, pop, country, blues, etc. in a band context as opposed to playing classical piano solo pieces. You really do need a fully weighted and graded hammer action for really precise piano playing. My only gripe about this action is that it is a little bit on the light side, and the fact that the octave width is narrower than full-size piano octaves. But as I've mentioned, lots of players that are far more experienced and talented than I am don't notice and or don't care about this issue. So this could just be a personal preference on my part that isn't shared with everyone else out there, but I just wanted to make my opinion clear. As I always say in my reviews, keyboard actions are super personal, so it's always best to try them out in person first whenever possible. I'm actually super curious about this balanced hammer action on the YC-73. I've never actually tried it before. I'm assuming I would still prefer a waterfall action for organ playing, but I am hoping to see one of these in a store one day so that I can check it out. So things that might come to mind that you think could be added to the YC-61. A lot of people expect Bluetooth audio in on keyboards nowadays, but you only see or really need that on home keyboards, not stage instruments. I would never depend on Bluetooth myself on stage, so the lack of Bluetooth is not an issue in my opinion. And another thing that you could add is a microphone input with gain and effects. You're starting to see that more and more on keyboards, but you usually only see those on entry to mid-level performance keyboards, usually arranger keyboards that are meant to be used more as a solo performance instrument for a busker or a solo performer in a cafe, that type of thing. But true stage keyboards don't tend to include those since they are intended to be used on bigger stages that have full PA systems and mixers for controlling your mics. So once again, don't think that's a big issue. The only things I would consider adding to the YC-61, I was surprised that I don't see port labels on the top of the front panel that really help you from needing to tilt up the keyboard or go behind it to confirm where your connections are. That's a common feature on stage keyboards, so Yamaha, please add labels for those. The XLR outputs on the YC-73 and YC-88 are a huge addition, preventing the need for external DI boxes at gigs, so why not add these to the YC-61? And if it was up to me, full-size 164mm octave width instead of the 159mm narrower octave width. But overall, I really have nothing significantly negative to say about the Yamaha YC-61. If you're okay with the action and the octave width, this is a fantastic choice. Okay, so the competition, Yamaha YC-61 at about $2,000 US versus Nord Electro 6D at about $2,700 US. So the Nord Electro 6D is definitely one of the closest competitors for the Yamaha YC series. It is a bit more expensive than the YC-61, about $700 US more expensive. You're probably already familiar with Nord, but just in case you're not, they are one of the most highly regarded manufacturers of stage keyboards out there. They have a great, very sturdy build quality, great quality sounds, they hold their value really well, and one of the most commonly seen keyboards on stages, from your local bar right up to big professional touring acts. The Electro 6D is aimed at the exact same customer base as the Yamaha YC-61, someone looking for a stage keyboard with multiple sounds, but with a heavy focus on Hammond organ sounds. Now, I haven't reviewed a Nord Electro yet, so I don't know a ton about them, other than having tested them out on many occasions in music stores. So I can't offer an in-depth comparison, but I can offer a few observations. Like the YC-61, the Electro also has a semi-weighted waterfall key action, which I believe is the TP80 action from Fatar, used in many Hammond clone wheel keyboards. And it's one of my absolute favorite actions ever, although this action does seem to differ slightly depending on which manufacturer is using it. I've always personally found the Electro's action to feel just a bit heavier than the action in Hammond clone wheels, which also use that same key bed, and heavier still when compared to the YC-61's action, which I find to be a little bit on the light side. That being said, I still personally prefer the action on the Electro 6D over that on the YC-61, simply because the Nord keybed is true full-size octave width. As far as the user interface goes, I did mention in this review that the YC-61 user interface is probably the best I've ever seen. I've always found the Nord user interface to be a little bit confusing and not terribly intuitive. I always have difficulty using them in stores, but to be fair, if I actually owned one and got familiar with the UI, maybe I would love it. So, not a fair criticism. As far as a sound comparison goes, I can't really offer much until I get the opportunity to rent one of these or buy one and do a review, but suffice it to say, I think the sounds on both of these keyboards are pretty awesome. With what I do know, deciding between these two would mostly come down to personal preference on the key action and octave width, the sound quality, and the price difference. I'd prefer the Nord's action, but given the extra cost and how much I like the YC's interface, it's not an easy decision, but I am a pretty big proponent of good user interfaces, so personally, I would probably lean in the YC's direction. Okay, the Yamaha YC-61 versus the Hammond SK Pro. The Hammond SK Pro is Hammond's long-awaited update to the SK1, which came out in 2011. The SK Pro is also aimed at the same market as the Yamaha YC-61 and the Nord Electro, and is priced in between those two at about $2,500 US. The SK Pro also has lots of sounds in addition to the main organ engine. I reviewed the SK Pro on my channel. I'll leave a link in the description below if you want to check that out. So to sum up very quickly how I would compare the SK Pro to the YC-61, the SK Pro's Hammond organ engine and features are probably a step up on both the Yamaha YC-61 and the Nord Electro, and the true full-sized waterfall action on the SK Pro is probably the best organ action there is, at least in my opinion. It's by far my favorite. As far as the other sounds go, I can't speak for the Nord, but the piano, electric piano, and other sounds on the Yamaha YC are far better than those on the Hammond. That's not to say the Hammond piano and electric piano sounds are bad. They're not. They're actually pretty good and totally usable. But the equivalent sounds on the Yamaha YC are borderline spectacular in my opinion. As an example, the SK Pro has what Hammond and a lot of reviewers said was a vastly improved main piano sample from its predecessor, the SK1. And that vastly improved piano sample is a Yamaha sample, and from what I can tell, it sounds very close, if not identical, to the piano sample in my Yamaha PSR EW425 keyboard. And while that is an awesome piano sample, especially when it sells for about $500 US, it pales in comparison to the CFX Grand piano sample included in the YC-61. So overall, I would give the edge to the SK Pro in terms of Hammond sounds and features and key action, and I would give the edge to the Yamaha YC-61 in terms of user interface, non-organ sounds, build quality, and price. Okay, so the Yamaha YC-61 at about $2,000 US versus the Yamaha CK-61 at about $1,000 US, so half the price of the YC-61. So the big question here is clearly, what are you getting with the YC-61 that you aren't getting with the CK-61? And more so, are those features worth the extra money to you? So the main difference is the key action. The key action on the CK-61 is Yamaha's FSB, which is Future System Basic action. It's an updated version of an older FS action from some older Yamaha organs. These aren't waterfall keys and they aren't semi-weighted. They are synth-style diving board keys, but they do have a slightly heavier initial touch, and they are also the narrower 159mm octave width. Are they as nice as the waterfall keys on the Y-61? Definitely not in my opinion, but they're not bad at all, and they can also function as decent organ and piano playing keys, so you've got to keep that price difference in mind. Okay, the organ sounds. The organ engine on the YC series is a step up from the CK. The CK series uses the same organ engine as the Yamaha Reface YC, which is an AWM engine, and not bad at all, but the YC series uses the VCM organ engine, which is a significant upgrade, especially the rotary speaker emulation. So once again, the YC is definitely higher end, but once again, there's a pretty big price difference. Now for non-organ sounds, while I could be wrong on some technical details here, I do think, at least in my opinion, that this is kind of a wash. The CK series does seem to have a lot of the same voices, including the CFX Grand and other pianos and electric pianos that the YC does. User interface comparison. User interfaces on both the CK and YC keyboards are awesome. They're very similar in a number of ways. I reviewed the CK series first, and at that stage, it was probably my favorite user interface ever until now. The YC series is just a little bit better. Hey, connectivity. Connectivity is great on both, but the CK actually has a couple of cool extra features on it that actually make it a little bit better than the YC. The CK also has left and right line imports, but on the CK you can configure one of those as a mic input port for a dynamic mic with gain and vocal effects. And yes, I did try connecting a dynamic mic to the line in on my YC, but you can barely hear the mic at all. It's definitely not intended to be used with a microphone. The CK also allows you to specify a backing track stored on a flash drive as part of your live set, And you can even trigger that backing track to start playing when you press the rightmost white key on the keyboard with that live set loaded. That's a great feature for a solo performer. Okay, portability. The CK wins out on this as well. While both the CK-61 12 pounds and the YC-61 at 15 pounds are super light and portable, the CK-61 has the option of running on batteries, the YC does not. So is the YC-61 worth twice the price? That totally depends on your needs and your budget. For me, since I mostly play organ and I'm not a solo singing performer, the YC was worth the extra money for me for the improved organ sounds and the rotary speaker, as well as the key action. While the backing track and mic input functionality on the CK is pretty cool, it's not something I'm likely to use. But if you play more piano and just a bit of organ and you want the added portability and mic input, then you might save yourself a bunch of money and go with the CK series instead. So the Yamaha YC-61 at about $2,000 US versus the Viscount Legend One starting at about $1,800 US. Literally, as I was editing this review, a new competitor was announced. This is January of 2025, and that's the Viscount Legend One, which is available in 61 and 73 key versions. I don't know much about this keyboard yet, but the initial demo videos and the specs have me really interested. I've never personally seen a Viscount keyboard, but they are highly regarded for making great quality instruments and have a pretty good reputation for their Hammond organ sounds. They have a number of organ products, including the Legend Classic, which is a full furniture-style upper and lower manual organ with pedals meant to look like an original Hammond organ. They have the Legend and Legend Live, which are upper and lower manual portable organ keyboards, and then the Legend Solo, which is just an upper manual single portable organ. Viscount also makes digital piano products, so with the Legend One, they have released a stage keyboard that not only features their organ engine, but also features 2 additional sound banks with pianos, electric pianos, and the usual other sounds. They are also known for having a really nice feeling waterfall key action, but something important to note here, the 61 key model of the Legend One is an unweighted waterfall keyboard action, and the 73 key model is semi-weighted. I've reached out to Viscount to try and get some more info on this, in particular to ask if their other organ actions, which have been highly praised, are the unweighted or the semi-weighted versions. But I haven't heard back yet, so stay tuned to my YouTube channel for an update. This makes me wonder if the unweighted action might actually feel a little bit lighter than the YC-61, but the semi-weighted action on the 73 key version might feel heavier. Can't really tell without more information, and preferably testing it out myself. So with all this in mind, and a price that, at least initially, appears to be less than the YC-61 for the 61 key version of the Legend One, I'm really looking forward to learning more about this product, and I really hope to get a chance to try out both models and key actions in person. So I can't really say much more at this stage, other than you might want to look into the Viscount Legend One before you make a buying decision on a new stage keyboard. So the verdict on the Yamaha YC-61. As I mentioned earlier, I don't really have anything super negative to say about the YC-61. If you're looking for a high-end stage keyboard with a really nice waterfall key action, great organ sounds and functionality, spectacular piano and electric piano and other sounds, and a top-of-the-line user interface, tons of customization, and great connectivity, this is an absolutely fabulous keyboard. It's almost perfect for me to use with my band and allows me to only have to carry one keyboard around. The only issue with me is that narrower key width, which doesn't matter at all to a lot of other people. So when would I not recommend the YC-61? If you're looking for a stage keyboard that is more piano focused and aren't super concerned about organ functionality, then I would recommend either looking towards the CP series that have weighted key beds, or even the CK-88, which is $500 US cheaper than the YC-61 and has a fully weighted and graded GHS hammer action key bed. If you're looking for a stage keyboard with the YC's functionality but you don't want to spend that much, I'd highly recommend the CK-61. So that's pretty much it for this video. As always, I have links in the description below to products I've mentioned here so you can check out current prices in your area, as well as some links to other relevant reviews of mine, and also some links to online piano training that worked really well for me that I can highly recommend. So thanks again for stopping by, and happy piano shopping. Have an awesome day. Ding, ding.